Please welcome Chris Kubica. The stage is yours.
Hello, everyone. How is everyone doing? So it is my pleasure to be here again in Sofia, Bulgaria. The last time I was here last year talking about Google being extremely evil and doing very naughty things in Venezuela, getting people killed, tortured, and detained. So I do a lot of very active research, and my research areas, and I'm pleased I can talk about a lot of this during the keynote, involves IT, IoT, control systems, also different types of artificial intelligence, natural language processing, and takes advantage of land, space, sea, and air. Now, part of my background is I do come from the US military. I was busted when I was a kid, so when I was allowed to use a computer again, they never really know what to do with people like us, right? I became an aviator, and then I went into Space Command. And it gave me a very unique view of the world. And before the term cyber, or even cyber warfare, was even discussed, we were seeing these types of things in space and all sorts of digital attacks. Well, obviously, we've had a humongous shift in the past less than 3 months of a geopolitical shift in the world. And before I forget, because I never want to be without thank yous, also thank you very much for hosting me here. So, big question is, what the heck is happening with NATO, right? So Bulgaria is a very valued NATO member. And the last time that this particular administration was in power, I had the privilege of helping to run the EU NATO cyber warfare exercises in Brussels. And during that time, we wrote up a letter for part of the exercise, and I'll do it from memory. 2016, during the first presidency. Now, the scenario was that there was a huge cyber warfare attack against Eastern Europe and London, and it started killing people. And the response from the US government was, per Donald Trump. When I was last at the NATO headquarters, I begged them, I pleaded with them to increase their military spending. However, they did not do so. We see what's going on in Europe. Our hearts are with Europe. However, American blood will not be spilled. Now is the time for Europe to stand on its own 2 feet. Now, that's the letter that we wrote in 2016. We had representatives from Bulgaria, the UK, you name it. And we were hoping that they would listen to us and actually prepare for what we see right now. Unfortunately, we see how well that's worked out. Who here thinks that NATO is going to be around in the next 5 years? Raise your hand. There's about 40% of the audience. And would you have had the same opinion last year? No. So, it's very problematic when we take a look at what's going on in the United States. Now, coming from a background of cyber warfare, I'm very happy to tell you that I was supposed to be on the U.S. Defense Science Board, which is the top 40 experts in their field who are U.S. citizens. And mine, I was supposed to be for generative AI and cyber warfare. Unfortunately, because our chairperson is a woman, and they could not officially fire us, they paused the board indefinitely. The people who were working with CISA and election interference, they fired them, they had to rehire them, but they have just been put on paid administrative leave and not permitted to do their job. Who here feels safer hearing that? Nobody, right? Now, I have to stress, at least from my point of view, I think that we are at war. Now, if you don't know that much about my background, I was actually in Kyiv in 2022. I was called in case there was a nuclear cyber incident. Now, my background is also nuclear cyber incidents. I've handled numerous ones. And that's probably one of the worst things you want to actually talk about, right? Yeah. That's not a good thing. The reason being is, years ago, I got a hold of the Chernobyl IoT radiation detector, and I was able to adjust it and reported it to the Ukrainians in the US, and got put on the radar with part of my nuclear work, and that's why I was called up. Again, I do want to stress, you do not want a radiation detector belonging to Chernobyl hanging on the public internet that somebody can take advantage of. I seem to recall there was a guy who became an MEP, because I met him at the European Parliament, where he had been a presenter here in Bulgaria, and he was a comedian. And on the show, they go, oh no, there's something going on at Chernobyl, and then it clicked off. And then 20 minutes later, it came back on and it was a joke. But I was told it was not a very comfortable feeling during that time. Now, I've seen the effects and the devastating effects of cyber warfare. When I was trying to get over the border to the safety of the European Union and to Romania, we chose a southern central route through PMC Wagner troops. And here we were at the border, and night was falling, and Russian troops had gone into Chernobyl and kicked up a bunch of dust, and our radiation detectors started pinging very, very lightly. At the same time, there was specifically aimed misinformation against Ukrainian males, and what the messages said was, you won't be able to stay with your families, but there is this stream against the border, and if you go over the stream, you will cross into Romania, and the border guards will be obligated to rescue you out of that water. And it was the dead of winter. The BBC confirmed last year that hundreds of Ukrainian men died. Imagine that desperation, because you may never see your families again when you drop them off at the border. Then, in the middle of the night, Russia hit the Ukrainian state border guard with a wiper virus, similar to the Shamoon virus that hit Saudi Aramco, which almost obliterated worldwide economies. So when you saw pictures of people like me trying to get over the border in the dead of winter, some people froze to death because the traffic was halted. They were down to pencil and paper. When you try to leave a country with children, they want to make sure that your children are your children. So if your house was on fire and you couldn't grab the paperwork, and they couldn't access the database for various identification, you were turned back. And that's where we are right now. And that was 3 years ago. And now we have this, what the foo is going on with NATO? What's going on with our allies, or our close ally, which is now turning into, instead of a friend, a frenemy. So, when I think about some of the ways that technology is being used against us, I now have an opportunity to take that doom and gloom that I've just given you in a bit of a reality check to turn it around a bit. And instead, because we're going to combine the keynote and my technical presentation, talk about some of the research and an invitation for collaboration on what we are trying to do with technology. Because quite frankly, I'm tired of technology being weaponized against everyday people. So some of the projects I am looking for to collaborate with, I think you will like. And it is a call to action, because I think that everyone in this room and everyone watching has the mindset, the ability, and the skills to help out. Number one, we are attempting a hot rescue of an individual somewhere in, we'll just say, Central Asia, who decided in 2021, when terrorist troops were coming into their government facilities, to give up his seat and his family's seat, to leave that country, to go back in and completely wipe and write over the biometrics and employment information of any individuals that had worked for Western powers. Now, he has been on the run with his family Due to a recent executive order, his family's visa to the United States was canceled because they decided no more people from Muslim nations for a while. So we are actively looking for contacts in an EU country, trying to secure an EU visa, looking for a job for him, and to get him out. He did a very, very heroic thing and saved thousands of lives by doing so. Another project that we're working on is something that started last year. One of my trips to Bucharest, I happened to land on the day of the vote, and the surprise election, well, almost election, surprise vote for Georgescu. Yay! Does everybody know who Georgescu is? Yeah! Don't drink the water! So it was a surprise. It was quite funny because Dan, who runs the DNSC, he gave me this nickname, the Cyber Harbinger, because he said, whenever I land in a country, something happens. So I land, surprise vote. Right? Whoopsie! I'm surprised they invite me back. So what I did was, using natural language processing and 4 parameters, jargon, stylometrics, intent, and sentiment, I broke the language barriers and scored matching. Does everybody know who Alexander Dugin is? A few people. So he is the author, basically, of the current foreign policy of Russia. And he has very specific talking points. So I like to use linguistics and produced a scoring methodology to match up everything to Russian influence operations. That work was then broadcast in 10-minute segments across Romania on national Romanian television, and it was one of the pieces of the puzzle that annulled that particular vote. So we can actually use the same tools that they're using against us, and I'm still active in that. On my last talk here in Sofia, I discussed Google being very, very evil and breaking sanctions. So instead, what we've done is we've set up an automated system to look at the tech sanctions lists and the tech stack that is being used in dictatorships to then run reports ready for a lawyer, because you have to have a lawyer, to file for a sanctions violation on every single one. Because I have seen the detaining lists myself in Venezuela, and I had to map black torture sites from public sites. And I don't want that to happen again. We have another project. It's in Nigeria. And what we're looking at is the problem with Boko Haram. Does anyone know what Boko Haram actually stands for? No education for girls. So what we're doing and trying to do is leverage natural language processing and a variety of dialects, looking at their forums, their particular calls for action, as well as leveraging IoT sensors away from a variety of villages where they love to massacre. And they're not just doing it for religion, they're also doing it for oil rights, by the way. There's always money behind it. And so we're trying to save lives. And lastly, and this involves a bit of AI poisoning. How many of you have heard of the Uyghurs in China, right? Now, how many of you know that Hikvision has developed a Uyghur detection system looking at the Turkic features, right? Now, last year, after sanctions from the US were lifted off of Hikvision, they signed a contract with Iran to have hair detection system. So if a woman removes her hijab, it will send an alert for the religious police to arrest her, etc., etc. Now, years ago before this, when I found out that the Iranian government mandated IoT cameras in every mixed-gender entertainment facility, I ended up setting up a dork to find over 10,000 of these cameras. Now, how good do you think the security is on 10,000 cameras that have to point into one area? they're going to have all the same username and password, right? And there you go. But with the AI system that they're doing, we have specific poisoning. Now, if you are curious of how to absolutely attack AI systems, on my ResearchGate, I spoke in 2018 on Oxford University of how to attack and poison AI systems like this. So I am looking for help for people who go, I'm a little tired of this stuff. And I also want to express, as of this morning, the United States government is starting to send letters to allied nations and major corporations demanding that they adhere to the brand new hiring practices of Donald Trump, which means diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. And it's one of the reasons why I'm so glad to be dressed very, very feminine to prove that we all have a space here. So I'll take a few quick questions and then I'll go into the technical presentation. And thank you very, very much for listening.
Do you have questions? Maybe one question from my side. How can we contribute to this, your tasks?
Contact me, and we will collaborate. Oh, and I almost forgot. I bought the domain bandwomen.com, and I've been restoring all of the removed pages, including the removed pages of Puerto Rican representation in the military, because I'm Puerto Rican. They also wiped out our country.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Don't be shy.
Don't be shy.
Okay.
My favorite color is blue. I like Bad Bunny.
The guys are technical, so maybe the technical presentation will raise more questions. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. So, the one thing to know about me, and you like that I crossed out that I was, almost, on the Defense Science Board, is I like to hack every single thing. And I love encryption, and I see the world in ones and zeros. So I have a wide range of experience because I get bored easily. And the moment I get bored, I go after the Chernobyl IoT device. So you don't want me to be bored. Now, let's talk about generative AI. Now, last year, I was in Bucharest for a big government-level conference. And one of the panels that I was on was called, Is AI Your Friend or Foe? Now, at the time, I was so stressed out about Venezuela, because, man, I never want to do that again. So I was out smoking. I call it tobacco diplomacy. And the director of cyber operations in Moldova happened to be there, and he was telling me about their recent election and the runoff and how much generative AI was hitting them, especially out of a region called Gagauzia. Has anyone ever heard of that region? Yes. Amazingly, if you go more west, they're like, wait, what's that? That also shows how much the Western world knows about the Eastern world. And he gave me this great quote, of course AI is your friend for your enemy. So I am going to show you a few things. Now, when I look at these are fantastic, right? This is from Project Lincoln, which is kind of like a sort of inside the Republican Party, but opposition to, because they happen to be LGBTQ+. And this was one that Trump posted. Now, I love them both, and I'm going to tell you a little story about this one. Now, Trump did not make the Gaza Riviera video. There were two dudes who were visiting the US, and they were doing a demo on some generative AI software at a studio. It took them about 8 hours. They made this funny video. They thought it was hilarious. One of them posted it on their social media. Someone from the Trump campaign picked it up, and then Trump posted it himself. Now, obviously nobody checked it because in the middle of the video, this is one of the things that they're very against. I think they don't really like bearded belly dancers. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe they're into it. Without even checking the intellectual property, by the way, and Trump loved it. All right? And the Lincoln Project put out this one in response. Now, there's a couple of things I want to point out. We'll see the size. These are actually rather low quality. So they cannot be full screen. They're grainy. They morph. And I'm really surprised because the Lincoln Project spent about probably a good $100,000 on this particular one. They're good, but this is the maximum that the US can put out. And this is, will it play? Yes. Oh, fantastic. One of these days I'll get YouTube Prime. Probably not. Can I skip it? Oh, come on. How do I skip? Thank you. There we go. Yeah. I didn't sacrifice a VM of a Windows XP machine, so it's my bad. That's what I usually do. So on this one, I want to show you how high quality this is, the fact that this is full screen. Now, I won't mention what country this came out of. You can take a guess, and I might tell you off stage. This particular video was done just after the Zelensky visit to the Oval Office. Also, thank you, and thank you. And they put this together for less than $500 US. So you see the difference between what the US has and what Eastern Europe has. It also shows the challenges here dealing with generative AI. The stuff that is coming down here is much more realistic than the stuff that they get in the US. They actually get a lot of slop. It's trash. But here, well, it's a bit of a different story. So 2 days, $500 US. Now, as you might notice, my name is there. What had happened was, in addition to not particularly liking what had happened in the Oval Office, they were contacted by an intermediary who wanted, 50 videos, 30 seconds each, at a cost of $200 plus an extra $50 to speed up the process. So it came out to around $65,000 total of what they wanted, and they wanted all of these done to clean up the image of MAGA after the disastrous Oval Office visit. And instead, the group came out with what you just saw. Right? So, I'm a big believer in using the same weapons that the enemy uses against us. And I like 0 days. So when we think about cyber warfare and how generative AI and other technologies can help speed up these types of things, I went ahead and created a 0-day GPT that has already produced 26 live, used, and tested against a fictitious government called Arawakland. It is my pride and joy. I'm actually been using it recently for the link vulnerability in Windows and mass producing those. I can also do synthetic vulnerabilities and exploits, etc. But it is my pride and joy because Arawakland, it's been very useful. to get a lot of information out of that. So I went ahead, and because of my experiences in Arawak land, I started writing a book, How to Hack a Dictatorship with AI. Now, last century, during the Second World War, the precursor for the CIA put out a sabotage manual. It's called the OSS Sabotage Manual. It's a little booklet, and you had to be there in person. If you were a forced laborer and you had to work in munitions, they would tell you, change the oil in the machinery. Instead of heavy oil, use light oil. If there's a filter, poke it with your pencil. If it's a room or a building that is fireproof, start shoving trash, making it rife for a fire. Add to the bureaucracy of management. However, nowadays, if you're inside a dictatorship, that's very dangerous, right? You get caught, you're dead. Your family's dead. Your pet's dead. Kind of sucks. However, I don't think you need to be there. So I set up this manual, which has been tried, true, and tested in Arawak land, and it was produced via AI to be the evilest possible to retake control if you are a person inside a dictatorship with AI. And one of the reasons why it's quite important is the same techniques that they're using against us, we can flip the switch and use against them. And that came out this morning, by the way. So now that we're moving into the future, because the future is here, one of the things I did last year was publish a paper called, it's a very long title, Secrets from the Future, Hacking in a Post-Quantum Cryptographic World, la da 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 da. And it was inspired by a song. Does anyone know who Mick Frontalot is? Well, I'm going to tell you. We have hacker genre in the English language. It's fantastic. We have our own music. And he's got this song called Secrets from the Future. Now, it was written about classical computers, but the line that I enjoy using is, you can't hide secrets from the future with math. You think you can try, but in the future they'll laugh at your half-assed schemes and algorithms and math to avoid cryptographic attack. So we always have to think forward. But now, we have something coming down the line. It's called quantum computing. And although we are not where all of the tech dystopian novels and movies have put us, we still have to look at the issue because we are investing massively. Amsterdam is going to get a quantum computer that the European Union paid 50 million euro for. So I'll have access to that. And I already have access to a variety of them. And I'm just going to not go too deep tech, but to show you some of the things that we're also modeling. So when we talk about what is the difference between the smartphone in your pocket and a quantum computer, they have very different applications. Even when quantum computing is mature, you're going to be doing your Word documents, your whatever documents on a classic computer. But quantum computing will most likely be used, at least at this time, for simulations and solving problems that classical computers cannot. And of course, we're still in this, how do we hold qubits? What is entanglement? Is there a cat? Did a cat ever exist? Who knows? With superposition. And when you think of superposition, one of the things you can imagine is two singers located anywhere in the world that when one hits a note, the other is entangled and tied and hits the other note and is in harmony. And that's one of the easier ways that I can think of, as well as multitasking and doing harmonious operations anywhere. And some of the algorithms that can pose a challenge to current encryption right now, there's Shors and there's Grovers. And we have this idea that we have information and it's kept private and it's encrypted, but imagine if you had the master key to get into all of that. Now, back in the day, I'm sure you've heard of this country called the Soviet Union, right? So one of the reasons why it went bankrupt was there was a supercomputer race between the East and the West. And the supercomputer promised, like quantum computing, to be so good it would crack all current encryption. So the US broadcast that they were way more ahead in the supercomputing race that they actually were. So the Soviet Union ended up spending almost 20% of their GDP on supercomputing. And it was one of the reasons why they went bankrupt. And here we are again. It's like disco. This stuff comes back, just with a different name. Yay! So I did up a timeline. And this is kind of what I imagine the timeline is going to look for quantum computing and how we should plan. Now, one of the things I do want to stress is we have to kind of prepare. Nobody cares about expired credit card numbers, but you might want to keep your shopping data, especially if you bought a sexy time toy, right? That's the private part. So if we know that these types of things are coming, then we have to start using algorithms that are quantum resistant. Now, earlier this year, NIST finally came out with the finalist for quantum resistant algorithms. Unfortunately, that was delayed due to politics because the US likes to shut down governments. So when politics come into play, it actually slows down innovation and technology. So I do imagine, looking at history and disco, that there will be an arms race. Another issue that we have to look at is harvest now, decrypt later. Now, this is something that you may have heard the guy Edward Snowden had mentioned. That is the mass collection of data which can then be stored and decrypted later when you have a powerful enough computer. But here we are, when we know that things are going to be an issue, we again have to prepare because it's already going on. Has anyone heard of BGP routing or rerouting and manipulation, right? That's one of the reasons why it occurs. So I created an attack framework. I was inspired by Trump, so I called it the Quebeca, because I figured, why not? He puts his name on everything. And these are some of the things that we're looking at, and there's now been 2 papers that have also described part of this attack framework. And you can see the entire paper on my ResearchGate. I like to open publishly so people will actually read my work. But I'll never get a private island. Oh, well. I need to be a cyber criminal. So I used to actually work here. This is where I worked in Space Command. And at the time, that was the data collection facility for the National Security Agency. It's now moved to Utah. So I do know a few things about this topic. So the day before yesterday, I was giving the keynote at Cambridge University, which I was very pleased about because I'd never given a keynote at Cambridge. And I felt very posh. And I was describing sovereignty with encryption, timing, and navigation. And I want to point out a few things that were a bit disturbing. Earlier this year, the UK government decided to sign a humongous cloud deal with big US tech companies. And because of that, they started shifting their certificate servers from their own government authority to US big tech. So does anyone know or heard of GCHQ and the Codebreakers? Yeah, right? They use Amazon and also a bunch of subdomains, which is a little weird. The other almost keynote, Jeff Mann, he was the chap that ran the tailored access unit at the NSA. Him and I spoke about this over Signal, and he laughed because basically he said it would be a bit of an embarrassment if the NSA suddenly used a big company from a foreign entity on their website or any of their subdomains, right? Because you don't know what else is encrypted. You are trusting a lot, and you're trusting a government website and the reputation with a foreign entity and a foreign government. SIS is MI6. MI6 is the forward-facing intelligence apparatus of the United Kingdom. And they switched over to DigiCert on the 15th of March of this year. DigiCert is owned by an investor group located in Utah, right next door to the large NSA collection facility. And the CEO of DigiCert, Thomas Bravo, gave $921,825 to the Trump campaign last year. Would you feel comfortable in that situation? Raise your hand. It's in UK, right? This is the King of England. The royal family decided to also switch on the 16th of March, and they're using Google. And I thought it was very funny because I live in the Netherlands, and the King of the Netherlands, their website and the royal family uses our Dutch official encryption certificates because many countries have their own certifying authority. However, the King of England does not. Oh, and also funny story. My late Nana, she was actually given the keys to Warwick Castle by the then Crown Prince, now King Charles. So when we attended, we were not allowed to take pictures. We could only wait for the official press pictures. When we got them back, I noticed one big thing. Someone had actually altered his ears to make them look smaller. I still have the picture. So down here, does anyone know what dar.bg is? Hey, look, they're with the King of England. Yay! And this is the logo for HackerOne. GCHQ runs the National Cybersecurity Center. And let's say you happen to find a flaw at a nuclear power plant. As somebody plugs something in and you find it on the internet, and you want to tell them, hey, you know, this nuclear power plant called Sellafield, which I've been to, because I used to be a lecturer for GCHQ and for their nuclear apparatus. I want to report this in a safe way because you don't want a bad entity to get that information. Of course, spy agencies are looking at the inbox of where you disclose vulnerabilities. So GCHQ, in their infinite wisdom, decided we're going to use HackerOne. Now, this is what I told Cambridge. The UK and the US are currently embroiled in a quiet little trade war over tariffs and pressure from the US to kill the collections of specific taxes from US big tech companies. But in a strange twist of digital diplomacy, UK's GCHQ's National Cybersecurity Center relies solely on a US-based bug bounty platform, HackerOne, the only method of reporting critical vulnerabilities. And if you find that uncomfortable, I do, because it's going straight to Washington, D.C. Has anyone heard of the Patriot Act? The more patriotic it sounds, the worse it is. So that was set up basically to be able to get data from any U.S. company. If they do a request, they cannot tell anyone, and they go to a secret court. And so here are all these vulnerabilities on critical infrastructure in the UK during a trade war going straight to the United States. Is that a great idea? Amazing! That's right. That's right. So, yeah, I feel so responsible. Now, when we talk about encryption, my favorite topic, we need this thing called time and positioning, but especially time. The UK used to set the time. It was called GMT, from Greenwich Mean Time. They decided, I don't know why, to instead use the US Naval Academy. And why is that important? Well, time can be a kill switch. So if you want to do stock trading timestamps on the SWIFT network, you need accurate time. If somebody else owns the time during a trade war, and I've seen this happen before, yeah, it could be a problem. Missile launches, C2 systems, critical infrastructure, power grid, you name it. And many system times also go to US big tech companies. So, in a case years ago, there was a deharmonization of the EU power grid due to politics between two countries that don't always get along. And it was only discovered 2 years later because these system clocks on things like regular appliances were drifting. And it partially deharmonized the grid because of it. Now, when you're dealing with tight interoperability for critical infrastructure, you also need time. But would you trust getting your time from a server in China? Right? I wouldn't. Now, out in the news, they had mentioned Italy was concerned that the F-35 might have a kill switch. So I also have an aviation background, and after 2022, I happened to be with a very exclusive aviation group, and they had stolen, Russia did, 600 jets. So they called me in to ask, how could we ground them? And I told them the time and the encryption certificate, because when you fire up the plane, the flight computer, it syncs, and there's a variety of different parts that are also synced. And those also use certificates. And if it doesn't all sync, then your plane doesn't start. Now, we decided not to do it because we could not guarantee that if we did that type of attack to ground those aircraft, that they would actually be on the ground. Obviously, we did not want to kill somebody up in the air. So that's the type of kill switch you can actually have on an aircraft, not just turning it off. So no time, no encryption, and no positioning. And it's kind of important to do that. So I didn't want to give you a huge amount of references, but you can look up a variety of this stuff also on my ResearchGate. And lastly, I do have a bit of a call for action. I would love to hear your thoughts on what's going on right now here in Bulgaria, because I know what's going on in other areas, but I would love to see samples as well of any of the generative AI when it deals with misinformation, et cetera, that you all are seeing. Another thing is, take a look at your certificates. Do you actually need a certificate from Google? Can you get a certificate from an EU ally when you go to renew? Now, important thing to consider is what kind of attacks could big US tech do on these certificates? And there's a variety of them. As well as with timing, they can add latency, they can cut it off, they can say that there is maintenance. Maintenance. So you never know. And lastly, after my keynote the day before yesterday at Cambridge, they have decided to convene a special interest group. And they want international collaboration from EU allies to discuss the issues between timing, positioning, encryption, and cybersecurity. So if you would like to participate, please contact me, and I will be out there to discuss these issues. So thank you very much, everybody. I don't have these new books out yet, because I've been traveling all over the place. But one will be on my academic paper, and one will be how to have fun and hack a dictatorship with AI. And hopefully it will give you a lot of ideas of how we can turn it around and use the weapons that they use against us, against them. So thank you very much, everyone, for the technical portion.